down 22 points. Memphis sat 8 of their players. I mean, it was ridiculous. They obviously came out victorious, and they came back and won. Then they beat the Knicks yesterday. They clinched up the 8th seed. I don't give them a chance. Maybe a game. Tell me who wins and why and where you have this series going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I felt anyone in that bottom 3, because the Nets, the Magic, or the Pistons all could have ended up in the 8th seed. Any of them, I felt, had at best a 5-game series with Milwaukee. They're just too loaded. They're too strong. They shoot the ball too well. And if Giannis is healthy, which I think he is, he's going to dominate. I mean, it's plain and simple. To me, look, they have Blake Griffin, they have Andre Drummond, so they can make things happen on the interior. But after those two, I'm not a huge fan of Reggie Jackson. I'm just not a huge fan of the rest of what they have. I don't like their bench play. Luke Kennard really hasn't been what we're hoping he would be. So I don't see it for Detroit. I don't see this roster being a legitimate playoff roster year to year. I think that they squeaked by. They got in. Milwaukee should clean the floor with them.
Bucks in 5 tops.
Yeah, I'll give him 5. I'll
Okay.
say that Detroit takes one game on the back of Blake Griffin because he played. Look, if you watch Blake Griffin this year, his game has evolved for sure, and I think he's playing. Yeah, he's playing the best basketball of his career, the most fun basketball to me as a purist of the game. Watching it, like he has been enjoyable to watch this year. I think he takes the team on his back and they win a game.
Okay, next one's a little more interesting than I think people think. Orlando versus Toronto. Now this series, they've tied here 2-2. They've split the season series. Steve Clifford has done an unbelievable job. You talk about, I posted something on Twitter about coaching matters in the NBA. Steve Clifford is another walking example of that. Toronto comes in with Kawhi, with Lowry, with Siakam. They obviously have had a tremendous year. What's the X factor? What do you see in this series, Noah?
Well, we could go on coaching for a while, and I think Steve Clifford is definitely a top 5 candidate for a Coach of the Year type of position just because of what he did with the Orlando Magic team that doesn't have a point guard to me.
Right.
DJ Augustine is their starting point guard. So how can you expect to make the playoffs with DJ Augustine as your starting point guard? To me, that's remarkable. So congratulations to Orlando, what they did this year. And Nikola Vucevic is a huge reason why he was so good on the inside.
Outstanding player.
I also don't give Orlando much of a chance. I just, plain and simple, Toronto, to me, is the best team in the Eastern Conference,
okay.
I think. And the record doesn't show it. They're the second best record in the league. But to me, they've gone under the radar this year in a sense that no one's really talking about them as a legitimate threat. You're saying, oh, look at Milwaukee, what they're doing. Philly is loaded. And you go through the list, and they kind of get thrown to the side a little bit. Kawhi Leonard, in the postseason, we've seen him perform in the postseason. We've seen what he can do in crunch time, and he hit some really big-time buckets in the regular season this year. He's great. Siakam is the X factor in this series, and honestly, through the playoffs for Toronto because he had such a great year. But you don't know if that's going to translate to the playoffs. Look, the defense intensity rises, and there's going to be more pressure on Pascal Siakam than in years past. But to me, Toronto wins this. I'd say the maximum it goes is 6, but I think in 5.
All right, let's do it here. This is the series that I'm most excited about. I know you are too. Brooklyn faces the Philadelphia 76ers, a 6-3. This is another regular season. They tied here 2-2. What do you see in Brooklyn? What do you see in Philly? Where do you see this series going, Noah?
Well, this series is incredibly important for Philadelphia, and I think, we can talk about who's playing with house money, who's doing what, but Brooklyn, they really have nothing to lose. As long as they show that they can compete in this series, that's all they need to do at 100%. The end of the day. They don't need to necessarily win it, and I think that they're going to give Philly one heck of a ride because there's already reports that Joel Embiid probably could miss Game 1 at minimum, which if he's not in there, to me, that's the hardest part for Brooklyn to stop because Jared Allen, as good as he has been this year, is still very raw. He's only 20 years old. He's still developing his skills, and Joel Embiid tends to dominate him in the post, plain and simple. So if he's not in there, that changes the whole dynamic of this series. What I will be watching is the Brooklyn Nets play a 2-3 zone about half the time, and it's a very effective 2-3 zone. You don't see NBA teams do it quite often, but Kenny Atkinson has found a way to get his guys because he likes to play small. He likes to play small ball. A lot of times he'll put Damari Carroll either at the 4, sometimes even 5. And Damari is about 6'7", 6'8". So they'll play that 2-3 zone. And with Ben Simmons at point guard, who can't shoot the ball very well, that's the matchup you got to look out for, as well as Joe Harris versus J.J. Redick. Because to me, Harris has the advantage the way that he's played this year. He's a little bit quicker, a little bit faster on the offensive end. I don't think J.J. can stay with him running around, having to go off of those screens, those curls. So those are the matchups I look for. If Embiid is healthy for every game, I give it Philly in 6. But if Embiid does miss game 1, I think this goes 7 games.
Okay. Philly, who went all in this year, getting Jimmy Butler from my Timberwolves, getting Tobias Harris from the Clippers. This is a huge, huge postseason for Brett Brown and his guys. We'll get into who's got the most pressure coming into the postseason, but my pick is Joel Embiid, and he's already in danger of missing game 1. So that's something to look out for. All right, last one in the East, the 4 versus the 5, Boston, the underwhelming Boston Celtics, who everyone thought was going to dominate the East. You know, last year they make this incredible run. Oh, they get Kyrie, they get Gordon Hayward back. Did not turn out as planned, 49-33, which, look, still pretty damn good, okay? But it wasn't the expectations that everyone thought it would be. Against Indiana without Victor Oladipo, Nick McMillan has also done a tremendous job with his guys. What do you think in this series is the difference, and who are you picking?
So at first I thought, all right, Boston's got this one wrapped up. And then I get the news yesterday that Marcus Smart's going to miss the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, which some people who don't follow the NBA extensively might say, all right, that's not the end of the world. He's a bench player. He's a role player. He doesn't score a lot. He's just kind of a glue guy, right? And they can go without him. That's a massive loss. Look at what Marcus Smart did for your team in the playoffs last year.
He was tremendous.
He comes and he performs at his highest level when the postseason comes around. To me, that is a detrimental loss to your team. And I think Brad Stevens knows that deep down, that this team's not the same without Marcus Smart there, and that's why they went out and made sure to get him back this year, because had he gone to a different team in free agency this past summer, the Boston Celtics would have been a completely different team. So let's just get that out, because I think that's massive news that's come out overall. The Pacers, without Victor Oladipo, they've done a great job weathering the storm. Nate McMillan, as you mentioned, has done a tremendous job coaching this group. They're young. They're fun to watch. Bojan Bogdanovic has taken a step forward in his game and his scoring ability. Thaddeus Young continues to just do what he does and make things happen. And Miles Turner continues to improve that jumper from the outside. It looks really, really good. So I like Indiana. I don't like them enough to win this series. But again, I think this is a 6 or 7 game series just based on the fact that Marcus Smart won't be there. Boston wins it, but they squeak by, and then having to face Milwaukee likely in that second round, I don't think they can match up with them without Marcus Smart, honestly.
We're talking to Noah Eagle, host of the student section on Sirius XM 84. You can listen to that Monday nights at 7 to 9 p.m. here. Let's move to the West. Golden State versus the Clippers, the 1 versus the 8 Clippers. What else can you say about them? I mean, like I said before, I mentioned that they traded away Tobias Harris. It looked like they just didn't want the 8 seed. They wanted to rebuild. Doc Rivers, another coach that's done a phenomenal job. What do you see in this series? Warriors won the season series 3-1. Is this just a sacrificial lamb at this point, going to play Golden State?
Yeah, I mean, I try to avoid any sort of killing, but Golden State does that to quite the majority of their opponents anyway, and they're going to be somewhat motivated, I think, just because people say, all right, are they somewhat vulnerable? KD, all of that news is maybe getting to them, and Boogie, insert him into the lineup, and there's chemistry stuff. No, they're gonna roll right through them. If this is not a sweep, it'll be a gentleman's sweep of some sort. Like LA might win the first game, and then Golden State just rolls right through them in the next 4. The Clippers are a great story. They're very similar to the Nets in the fact that they built it the right way. They have a great coach. They have a great front office, and they found young talent that fits together. Montrezl Harrell is one of my favorite stories, the way that he's developed this year, but they're just not talented enough to stay with Golden State, plain and simple.
Okay. My next matchup, I actually think this is going to be my upset of the playoffs in the first round. 7 versus the 2, San Antonio versus Denver. There's something about Denver. Every time they play in a big spot, Noah, they just seem like they kind of fold. I know they had a tremendous year. They took that next step. San Antonio coming in, they tied the season series 2-2. Can you see an upset here? Can you see San Antonio upending the number 2 seed Denver Nuggets?
Well, look, with Greg Popovich, anything is possible, and I think that people undersell the Spurs roster, and when they lost DeJounte Murray, I think that a lot of people said, all right, they're not going to achieve anything that they necessarily want to achieve, and I still think that's true because they're not going to advance very far in this playoffs without their legitimate point guard. I mean, they have Forbes out there. He's fine. He's not great. Derek White is fine. He's not great. They're going to rely on DeMar DeRozan. They're going to rely on LaMarcus Aldridge. But to me, the reason they're going to lose the series is because they don't have anyone who can match up with Nikola Jokic, who is, I think, him or Embiid, and honestly, I might give the slight edge to Jokic, is the best center in the league. And he proved that this year to me. He should get MVP votes the way that he played this year. And he is the perfect blend of an old school and modern day center all in one, and there was no one on the Spurs who can match up with him for a full 48.
Couple more minutes here left with Noah Eagle. We got 2 more series left. Portland was interesting because if they would have lost yesterday, they would have played Utah, I'm pretty sure, and then they ended up coming back and winning, and now they get to play OKC, who OKC has swept the season series with them 4-0. This is a 6-3 matchup. CJ McCollum out. You know, they've had some injuries. What do you see in this series? This is very interesting. Again, 6-3, Oklahoma City versus Portland.
Talk about house money. That's Portland to me. That's the team that's playing with the most of it because, like you said, no McCollum for now, and Jusuf Nurkic, who to me that was a gruesome leg injury against the Nets, and he was playing incredibly well. Like that was an addition to this team. The way that he put his game and improved his game this year, he had been playing at a blistering pace, and with him playing at that pace, the Blazers were playing at a blistering pace. So I don't know. This series is so interesting to me because Oklahoma City, to me, almost put themselves in a bad spot because they end up getting this 6 seed. They're only a game ahead of San Antonio and LA. And had they been in that 8 seed, there would have been no expectations for them to beat the Warriors in a series. Mm-hmm. But because they're in the 6th spot and they're playing against a banged-up Portland team, if they don't win this series, how's that going to look for Russell Westbrook and Paul George and Steven Adams and Billy Donovan and that whole team? I mean, this is a team that had such high expectations. At one point was a top 3 seed for, pretty deep into the season, and they fell off so far towards the end of the year. If they don't win this series, that is bad news in Oklahoma City. So I think they end up getting the job done, but probably 6 games. I don't think that Damian Lillard and company make it easy.
All right, last one here. Houston versus Utah. Houston coming in after really, to me, just one of the biggest chokes last year. They should have been in the NBA Finals. There was no doubt about it. They really kind of coughed it up. I know they didn't have CP3 and all that kind of stuff, but a couple double-digit point leads. This is a huge postseason for them, Noah. What do you see here in Utah? It's not going to be easy. Split the season series 2-2. What do you see with this one?
Well, again, so here is another example of someone that almost put themselves in a bad position because they were on the fast track for that 3 seed. They ended up losing their last game of the year, and now they're in the 4, which means even if they win this first-round series, they probably get Golden State
Correct.
In round 2. So that's the last thing that you wanted if you were the Houston Rockets. You didn't want to see them until the Western Conference Finals. So now your path has been made that much more difficult to get back to where you want to be. Houston's a better team than Utah just based on the fact that they have James Harden. It's plain and simple. To me, it's no different than me saying Duke had Zion Williamson, so they were better than most teams on most given days. And I think that's the case with Houston. James Harden is the best scorer that this league may have ever seen. The way that he has manipulated the rules, the way that he has manipulated fouls, it's so impressive. The matchup to watch is how will Jay Crowder defend James Harden in this series? If he figures it out, if he finds ways to just keep him to 28 instead of him getting 40, then Utah has a chance because Donovan Mitchell is fantastic. I love Joe Ingles. I love what Utah has done this season, and I love what Quinn Snyder has done as the head coach there as well. And Rudy Gobert is such a great rim protector that they're not going to make it easy. So I think Houston wins it, but again, this goes 6 or 7 games.
Utah, Brooklyn, L.A., Indiana, all these teams, not the most talented teams, man. It just goes to show at Timberwolves, you don't need a bunch of these young talent to actually get to the playoffs and win a series. My